What's up, guys? Thanks so much for joining us. Today, we're gonna do a little WJ Q&A and answer all of those questions that you guys have asked through the WJ build series. So stay tuned, you won't wanna miss this. Alright, so since starting this video series with the WJ, there's been a lot of comments, there's been a lot of questions. I got people in the DMs all the time asking me different things, which I absolutely love, and I love to answer you. I don't think that I have left a single comment or question unanswered. So I've kind of compiled the top list of them and things that people have been asking me. And I wanted to run through that real quick. So, number one, why a WJ? Why a WJ? I get asked this quite a bit. I finished this thing up so we could go on a camping trip. Any of those who saw some of the previous videos also know that I did this. I mean, realistically, I probably did it in a couple of months, but I knocked it out very quickly. So it was a quick process to take a bone stock 2003 Jeep Grand Cherokee. There's a 4-liter in it, and it had a bunch of stuff that needed to be done to the motor. We took a bone stock Cherokee and we put 6.5-inch coil springs on it. We put 1-ton axles underneath it, long arms, 37s, cut the fenders, tucked the tank, and got it on a trailer to take it with us for a 3-week family road trip. That road trip included a stop off in Moab. We checked out Arches National Park and Canyonlands. We didn't do a lot of Moab off-roading because we had the family with us, but the entire purpose was to take the rig with us and have a little bit of off-road fun and kind of put it through its paces and just see how it would perform. And then when we got back, we'd go through it and make some changes, upgrades, and take care of anything that needed to be done. So that said, we pulled into Dead Horse Point State Park in Utah, and before I even had a chance to get it off the trailer, a fella came up to me and he said, "Man, this looks awesome. I don't see a lot of them like this." I said, "Hey, thanks, just finished the build, appreciate that." And he looked at me and said, "So let me just ask you a question. Why a Grand Cherokee? Why not a Wrangler?" And you know, honestly for me, the Grand Cherokee is a relatively inexpensive platform in comparison to a Wrangler. So I bought this in 2017. I actually just needed a little bit of a different daily driver. I wanted something that I could pick up, and I knew that at some point I would modify, and I wanted to build to take off-road. I was already working on this project, and I knew that I wanted something that I could lift and keep more roadworthy than this thing was gonna be. So I started hunting around. I wanted to find something that already was a good foundation and a good platform, but something that I didn't mind tearing into. The WJ, I just have always really liked the looks of. I like the ZJs too. I don't know, I'm kind of just a sucker for, obviously, 4 doors and SUV style. I like kind of a big body 4-door rig.
Your username on TikTok was 4 doors more whores?
Yes.
In fact, one of the other videos I posted too kind of showed the XJ I had back in the day. So when I was looking for something back in 2017, I decided that I just wanted something that was reliable. I wanted something that had a good platform already, but not something that I was spending so much money on that I didn't mind tearing into. And let's use this as an example. If I'm still looking at an 03 Wrangler right now, you know, I think you'd be lucky to find just a 2-door Wrangler from that year or that range for under 10 grand. I've seen stuff online now that's 99, 2000, 2003, and people want 10, 12, $15,000 for a 2-door Wrangler. So out of the bag, out of the box, right off the bat, whatever you want to say, this whole Grand Cherokee cost me $4,200, tax, tags, and fees included. Had 133,000 miles on it or so. I chose the 4-liter inline 6 because it's a super reliable motor, and I knew that even with 130,000 miles on it, I get another 100,000 out of it easily. The other reason, and I looked around a little bit for the 4.7 V8, that kind of leads into the other question, which is, aren't you worried about this transmission blowing up on you?
Oh, that is terrific.
Not really. The 42RE, it's not the greatest transmission, but I've run it before in other vehicles, and I've never had a problem with it. I'm not putting a ton of power behind it. I take care of it.
So I stroke it, and I pet it, Massage it.
The 4-liter inline 6 isn't a powerhouse. You know, it's got enough torque and power to get by, and it's got the longevity I need. So I didn't really have to worry about destroying the transmission right off the bat.
Oh, I killed it!
So the 42RE, no problem with it. The bigger thing to me was I didn't want to have to buy a whole new transfer case. So most of the 4.7 V8s that I found were coming with the Quadra-Drive system. I believe that's what it's called, Quadra-Track, Quadra-Drive, something like that. And basically that's a full-time 4-wheel drive system in those Jeeps. Now, I know not all of them are equipped that way. I know that you can find the 4.7 with the Select Track. It just so happened that it was much easier for me to find the 4-liter with the Select Track MP242. The Quadra-Track, Quadra-Drive is not ideal. It's not something that you're going to want to drive if you're lifting this. If you have, comment down below, let me know how that's been for you. I don't believe that it's something that people do very often. Maybe I'm wrong, but I don't believe so. Also, the MP242, a lot like the MP231, has a slip yoke eliminator kit that you can find, and that's something that you want to, I mean, I was definitely going to upgrade to. When you're taking it off-road, I've always found that having the slip yoke eliminator kits have worked a lot better for me. So 4-liter inline 6, 42RE transmission, and the MP242 transfer case. That leads into another question I've gotten many times. Well, why didn't you use a 231? It already had the 242, and I had no need to swap it out for a 231. I did briefly look around as I was looking at the slip yoke eliminator kits for the 242. I thought maybe get on Marketplace and maybe see if I could find an MP231 that was already built and had the slip yoke eliminator. I did find, I think I found 2 different ones, but to be honest, you don't know what condition those are in. I mean, I think he wanted $400 for it. To pay $400 for that, not knowing what condition it's in, to get it home, tear it down, or just put it in and find out that there was issues with it. To me, it made a lot more sense just to get the slip yoke eliminator kit. And so I did that, and this has worked out great for me. So 231 versus 242, if your Jeep has a 242 in it, just stick with the 242. Get a slip yoke eliminator kit for it and run it. It's an awesome case. It's got part-time and full-time 4-wheel drive. Slightly different than the 231, but it's a very similar case. So have had 0 issues with it. Both yokes now, front and rear, are 1310 yokes, and it's worked awesome. My thought too is, you know, this drivetrain itself is good for what I need for right now. And I wanted to see how well it would do. So the 1-ton axle swapped underneath it. That gives us strength where we need it. I think putting bigger tires on it, obviously the first strain that we really see a lot is on the U-joints and on the axles, especially of a Dana 30 and a Dana 35. But that's really what I wanted to focus on, was getting bigger axles underneath it, a drivetrain that seems like it would be reasonable without breaking anything. You know, if one day it doesn't run anymore, we'll just LS swap it, because why not? Why not just LS swap everything? So that was kind of my thought. I think it's doing great. The motor, I've redone the rear main seal, I've redone the head gasket, the valve cover gasket, the, let's see, water pump, thermostat, timing chain just got redone, all of those things. So it runs great. You know, they run warm like they always do, but it's just a really good motor that runs for a really long time. So that's why I chose what I chose so far. All right, so we'll kind of hit all of these at once. Another question, or something that I mentioned, and people kind of they've given me suggestions and you know, asked me certain things about it. But what I mentioned was, with the 1-ton swap, I eliminated the ABS sensors on the stock axles. Those have just been eliminated altogether. That hasn't done anything as far as I can tell. It doesn't do anything with shifting. It doesn't do anything with, you know, I don't know. There's all sorts of stuff online, and there's questions that people have asked me that were things that I saw online while doing research, just to be sure that I wasn't going to screw up anything with the system. But it really just eliminates ABS. So no ABS system on it. I have no problem with that, actually. I kind of prefer it when I'm off-road. If it's something that you feel you really need, then you might want to do some more research and decide if that really makes sense. I think a lot of times that's also why people adapt the Dana 44s from like a Jeep Rubicon and swap those over on these Jeeps, is because you can keep some of those factory things. I suppose I could have tied into some of this. I'm not really sure, to be honest. I didn't do the research because I didn't really care that much. So no ABS sensors, and no wheel speed sensors, which also means I lost my cruise control and my speedometer. Cruise control, not gonna lie, I miss that. I like it because on the highway I can just hit set and cruise, and I don't have to worry about how heavy my foot's getting on the pedal or whether or not I'm going too fast. Although I did get a ticket the other day either way, and it wasn't for speed, it was because I didn't have tire aprons on my car, is what the ticket said, tire aprons. What they meant was mud flaps. They didn't write mud flaps, they wrote aprons. Stupid. Anyways, the speedometer, I know people have said, you know, well, if you got the MP231, it's got the speed sensor in it. It totally does. I don't care that much. This thing isn't a speed demon in the first place. You stand on the pedal, it'll do 80 miles an hour down the highway. Most of our highways around here are 60 or 70 miles an hour, so even if I'm standing on it, I'm not usually like, you know, I'm not doing 110 and gonna get in trouble because I didn't realize I was doing 110. Not gonna happen in this thing. But there's also a speedometer app that I use. So when I am on the highway and I feel like I'm getting up there a little bit, I just throw it in the dash real quick, turn it on, and it tells me exactly how fast I'm going. This is just GPS based, throw it up in the dash, and I'm good to go. I know exactly what I'm doing. That leads into another thing. So, how are those 37s doing with 410 gears? They're doing awesome. No complaints here. I have no issues with it whatsoever. So, would I like a little bit different gear ratio? Yeah, at some point, probably. I think that the next step is probably going to be 538s and 40s. I like the 37s a lot, but I actually have a little bit more clearance than I thought I was going to, and I think running 40s, I just want to run 40s. So the 37s are good for now, but if I change gear ratios, what we will do is probably put like a Grizzly locker in the 14 bolt in the back, maybe a Yukon zip locker in the Dana 60 up front, 538s likely. Kind of thought about 513s, but I think 538s is probably what I would go with, and then 40s. And that's probably what we'll run. But for right now, 410s and 37s on 1-tons, it's killing it. It's doing great. No complaints, no problems. Here's a reminder to anyone who hadn't watched some of the other videos or just hasn't gone through all of the different explanations that I've given on some of this stuff. And again, these are questions that I get. I wanted to build something that was reasonably priced. I didn't build $3,000 axles. I didn't, you know, outfit them with absolutely everything. What I did do is went to the salvage yard here, the wrecking yard, Pasco Auto Wrecking, if you're in the Tri-Cities or Eastern Washington area, and I picked up a 2004 14 bolt out of a Silverado 2500. I have a 1992 ball joint Dana 60 front, and I think maybe I'm about $1,000 into both axles when all said and done. But what I made sure of when I bought them is that they both had 410 gears in them. I think a really common gearing is 373s in both of those axles. That's pretty common, but if you can find it, I found 410s, and I found the rear one with a limited slip diff, which, you know, it's not a locker, but it's a limited slip diff, so it's good from the start. You know, you can't have everything right off the bat when you're building something, unless you're made of money, in which case you're probably not watching this. So 410s front and rear, the limited slip in the rear on that did great, and it had factory disc brakes. So now you've got disc brakes all the way around, 410s all the way around, a limited slip in the rear, and 1-ton axles that basically needed trusses welded on them, and they needed to be situated so that they could go underneath the Jeep. Other than that, I haven't upgraded anything else with the axles. These are straight from the wrecking yard, straight from the manufacturer as they would be. I have no idea what the history of the axle is, obviously, because it was sitting in a wrecking yard, but It's probably going to need some upgrading soon. I think I got a little bit of fluid leaking out of one of the outer axle seals on the passenger side, so that's something I'll have to look at. Even just sitting around, whether it was in the wrecking yard or in my front yard, and then getting underneath the Jeep, they were a little bound up, and it took a little bit of driving to start loosening them up, which means some of those seals might be worn out and ready to be replaced anyways. I do have U-joints for the front where the stub shaft meets the inner axle shaft, so we're going to upgrade those at some point. But as far as a setup, 410s with the limited slip in the rear, you know, $1,000 into a set of 1-tons, I think that it's a great situation so far, and it's worked really well for me, so why not give it a shot? All right, so a couple of the other things actually come up with the install of the front bumper. So there's a lot of trimming that goes on with the front bumper, and the question has come up a couple of times. One, what did you do with your reservoir for the wipers? And two, what about that vacuum box on the passenger side? Both great questions. So the original reservoir for the wipers is gone. This is the aftermarket, well, it's not an aftermarket one. This is a reservoir for a ZJ. That's actually something else you can find online. A lot of people have done WJ to a ZJ reservoir swap. It's been a while since I've looked, and maybe they have like an aftermarket intake, but where this intake is, I believe what they were doing most of the time was they found some place in here to mount it and relocated this little guy. And honestly, with the time frame that I had and the need or lack thereof for windshield wiper fluid at the time, I didn't even bother. So right now, it has no reservoir for the wipers. Not a big deal for me, but at some point I do want to hook that up because it'd be nice to have, mostly because when you're off-road and mud splatter, things like that, it's nice just to be able to hit that and get the spray, but really not concerned about it right now and just not using that reservoir. The vacuum box, however, so I actually relocated the vacuum box, and I don't know that you're going to be able to see it here. Also, it's not in here anymore. So, but right down in this general area below the battery, I put the vacuum box down there. I was rerouting the hoses, and I must have grabbed the wrong hose. Either way, it wasn't the vacuum hose that I reconnected. So, I wasn't getting the vents up top to turn on, and every time I would switch over to having the vents, the top vents and the floor vents, or just the top vents in general, the top vents weren't opening. It was just blowing through the defrost. I couldn't figure out why that was because I thought I hooked everything back up right, but eventually I went back in there, I pulled out the vacuum box that I had, I found the line and realized that I hooked up the wrong line to the vacuum box. The vacuum line was open. As soon as you plug off the vacuum line and switch it over to those top vents, the top vents are working again. You have to have that vacuum line at least connected at the end, or you just plug it. And I actually think I folded it in half and then zip tied it too. Is that correct? I don't know, but honestly, I don't care. It works just fine. If it's going into a dead end vacuum box that doesn't do anything anyways, I don't really know what else that could be doing differently than me just capping it off and not having a box there. So one less component that I have underneath the hood or inside the inner fender. And the biggest thing, my AC and my vents work just fine. So that worked for me. Don't have the box anymore, don't have the reservoir. All right, so the last thing that I would say, and I've got this comment from a couple people, and I don't know if those of you out there that have asked this question, maybe you're just into like really nice looking Grand Cherokees, and I can totally appreciate that. I am not. I don't mind it looking good, but to me, looking good is not, I don't need it to be shined up and sparkly clean. I don't need paint matching accessories. I don't need any of that. I want it to actually be something that I'm beating on off-road, and I want it to be functional. That's the biggest thing for me. The question was asked, why don't you just take the time to roll the fenders? I don't I don't know, because I didn't want to do it. Rolling the fenders, I've rolled fenders on cars before, on lowered cars, with an actual fender roller, and that wouldn't have worked on this. I can guarantee you that. It's got 37-inch tires on it, and it needed a lot of clearance. So I trimmed probably 2 to 3 inches out of the fenders on the front and on the back. And so getting them like super clean and making it look like it was naturally a factory body line, it just wasn't gonna happen. So that, and again, I don't have time to do that. I know somebody commented about, you know, should just cut them, cut little notches in them, and then roll them over. It's not anything I was into doing. And to me, I'd seen enough different ones. I've looked at fenders on different rigs and how they look, and I really like the cut line that I was going for. Quite frankly, it looks just fine to me. I really like it. So, all right, so that's pretty much the questions that I've been asked. I can't really think of anything else off the top of my head. I wrote down a little list from my comment section, from the DMs, and just kind of the questions that people have asked me. Everyone's been awesome. I really can't thank you guys enough for your support. It's been really cool to have people just reach out and say, you know, this build's an inspiration. That thing's a beast. I can't wait to cut mine up. I'm going to buy 1-tons at the junkyard right now. I encourage you to do all of those things. I think the last thing that I would say, just in terms of the motor and the combination here, you know, you never know until you try, right? You can sit on forums all day or message boards or surf through the internet and get all sorts of comments from people, but I find it often that people may not have done some of the things that they're suggesting that you can't do. So if it seems feasible to you and it's something you want to give a shot, just try it. There's no reason not to. I would encourage anyone to take the steps that they want to take and modify the rig that you want to modify and go have fun with it. If something breaks, if something doesn't work, you just do it again. Do something else. Fix that. Make that modification. Honestly, in my past, that's always been the evolution of a rig. This is honestly the first one that I have from the very beginning kind of planned out and just gone for all at once. Most of the other rigs kind of started with a little bit of lift and 31s, and then went to 33s and added some more lift, and then cut out the fenders and went with 35s, and you just kind of evolve and add to it as you can. And whatever gets you started and gets you off-road and wheeling, I think that's great. I think that's what you should do. Have fun with it. There's just tons of options out there. You know, whatever you're into, go for it, and find some friends that are into it too. You will. People are really encouraging about everything. So again, thank you guys so much for watching the channel. If you haven't yet, and I know some of you haven't because I know you're watching this, but you haven't necessarily subscribed. So take a minute, hit that subscribe button down below, hit that thumbs up, hit that bell notification so that you don't miss the next time I post a video. And I apologize, it's been a couple of weeks. I won't let it go that long. I have just been super busy with a lot of stuff, but we'll keep you posted on what we have going on. We are still working hard at this Durango. There's a lot of stuff going on with that. There's a whole bunch of other stuff I'm gonna share with you soon. On the next video, we're gonna talk about some of the changes that need to be made to the Grand Cherokee. Now that I've had it out, now that I've been using it for a little while, what needs to be upgraded, what needs to be modified, what needs to be tweaked. So again, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, hit that bell notification, and find out what we need to do to this Grand Cherokee to make sure that it's up to snuff when we take it out on our next wheeling trip. I really appreciate you. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.